So I'd like to welcome to the Greenbelt stage, again in video form, Jason Rohrer, who is an independent game developer and has a whole list of unusual, interesting games, one of which, Passage, we've used at the festival before in a devotional setting. So, Jason, I've been talking to lots of people about the games they play. You create interesting games. Are there games that mean something to you, that are valuable to you, that you play as well?
I'd say that, in the realm of video games, these kinds of experiences are sort of few and far between. I feel like we're sort of just getting started. And there's a number of people out there in the world who are making games who are trying to sort of crack this nut or push further and further into this territory. But there's a couple of games that have been meaningful to me in the past that I could touch on. One is a game that I think came out in 2010 or so. It's called Braid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a game that I'm assuming you played, Andy, right?
Yep.
And it's a game that on its surface sort of seems to be about a character who's reflecting on a failed relationship and thinking about how the passage of time has affected that relationship and so on. But as you kind of dig deeper into the meaning of the game, it seems to be about humanity's relationship with time and sort of grander scale mistakes that humanity may have made, or something even kind of bigger than that. Maybe humanity's relationship with reality, or in the game there's this very close knitting between the sort of thematic material that's woven throughout the game in the form of text segments and stuff that you read, and what you're doing in the game as a player, as you are able to directly manipulate the flow of time as you play to solve different puzzles and so on. And so each of the puzzles kind of feels like sort of a very harmonic riff off of some of the thematic material that you just were encountered, and these things are sort of braid. Well, I mean, the game is called Braid, but these things are braided together in a very sort of tight chord as you play the game, and it all feels like it really is kind of like cut from the same cloth. Whereas a lot of games have thematic material kind of woven through them, but it kind of feels stuck on, or like you hear some sad story about some character who died, and then you pick up your gun and run and shoot some more people, right? They just kind of feel like, kind of tacked on, kind of jammed in there. Like, imagine you play a chess game, and after every couple of moves, like, somebody gets up and reads a little bit of, Ulysses by James Joyce in the middle or something, right? And so, so trying to figure out, can we meld these two things together? Can we create really meaningful, deep, rich gameplay that also feels like it has something to say about, the human condition, or whatever we expect, art to be doing?
And so with Braid, you've described there, the technical achievement of it. Do you also have a personal connection to that game? Did it move you emotionally, or did it go beyond just being a really, great example?
Was emotionally moving as much as it was like this really finely crafted example of this kind of very cohesive work of art that moved me emotionally, mostly because it was so sublime and it inspired awe. Really gets it so right, and I think that's basically what that game did for me.
Yeah, it'd be good to talk a little bit about some of your games. I haven't kept track with all of them because you're essentially a prolific game creator. One of them that goes back, you were saying how you still sort of stood under the pixely shadow of Passage, is a game we used at Greenbelt, and we used it essentially as an act of worship. So we played the game together, and we intertext some verses from the Bible with some of your commentary about what the game meant to you.
I have no plans for this day, no destination in mind, no stops planned along the way. I am stepping out in faith, with you as my guide.
A close friend from our neighbourhood died last month. Yes, I've been thinking about life and death a lot lately. This game is an expression of my recent thoughts and feelings.
Now it's kind of an odd thing to do, and I'd be interested to hear from you. Is that something you feel is appropriate for this game you created, or how do you feel about that, what we did to it?
I'm not sitting here saying, oh my gosh, you can't use Passage for this. I mean, it's in the public domain and people can do whatever they want with it. And I'm happy that people have taken it and mashed it up in all different sorts of ways, including the way that you just described. Was I thinking religiously when I created the game? I would say absolutely not. I mean, part of what the game is about is the sort of finality and completeness of a life that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, where the end is really the end, right? If you're viewing it from a faith perspective, I'm assuming that you're, hoping that the end is not the end, right? Which changes the way that you perceive a life and changes the meaning of the life, where the life is almost like the appetizer, right, for the main course, which is coming later, which is the afterlife. And so Passage is really about this sort of, this very bookended kind of life where, you really literally are walking from the left edge of the screen as a young person to the right edge of the screen where old age is going to happen and where you are eventually going to die, and where you can very clearly sort of see, like, if I made the game when I was 30 years old. Close friend of ours had just died of cancer. My wife was pregnant with my second child, so the sweet time that I had with my first child was coming to an end, as an only child in this very kind of close relationship we had with him. And so all these things were happening. I was, losing hair, looking in the mirror as I was getting older, turning 30 and all these things. Like, yes, my grandfather died at age, 63 or something. So is my life like half over, So I was really thinking about this a lot and imagining, if I could see my entire life, well, I'll probably die when I'm old, I'll probably, have grandkids. I'll probably have these things happen. There's probably going to be all these other things that happen in my life. I'll probably, witness my spouse dying someday, or she'll witness me dying, or, definitely witness the deaths of my parents. Maybe one of my siblings will die. If we really reflect on these things and really kind of almost like map out what's coming in the future, we can try to sort of imagine it and imagine the most likely scenario. And so that's what Passage is just sort of like almost my, my life flashing before me in video game form. And looking at life, and when we're looking at a source for meaning in life, if we're coming from, we're not coming from a faith perspective where the meaning is sort of provided for us, and it's coming from a sort of a more existential perspective where life is sort of inherently meaningless and almost nonsensical, and there's this looming, gnawing question that seems to have no answer. Can we see it as not cruel and see it as beautiful if we step back and look at it as like a story with a beginning and a middle and an end? And so Passage is like condenses it down in 5 minutes and kind of surprises you with it. It lets you sort of study it and reflect on it in a very sort of simplified, symbolic form.
Yeah, I mean, I think that potentially that's why it fitted so well at Greenbelt, because it's a space here much more open, so it's more of a sort of a questioning faith rather than looking to reduce things down to an answer. And I think that probably is why there was a really strong connection to it as we played in the room, and I think it left lots of questions unanswered. If people are here looking for games that have got more meaning in them, or games that have that potential, how would they go about finding them? What advice would you give to people here at Greenbelt to play, I don't know, better games or more meaningful games?
Well, I'm sort of wrapped up right now in the hype surrounding No Man's Sky, which is this game that's, I think, has been in development for about 4 years, where it's a sort of a giant, very comprehensive, infinite universe simulator. And I guess, from a faith perspective, it's probably a pretty interesting game to think about and explore. A game with, I think they say something like 18 quintillion unique planets that are all procedurally generated, and you're given a spaceship with a hyperdrive that you can use to fly around and explore all these planets and discover alien life forms and so on, and intelligent alien beings as well, in a very lonely universe, a universe where it's so big, you'll basically never even have a chance to run into another player or another human being who's potentially exploring this place too. So it's a game that makes you feel very tiny and so on. I've barely gotten to play it so far because it just came out about a week and a half ago. But there's a lot of debate about whether this is good, right? This thing succeeds as a game because it's so open and so lonely, and there's so little direction about what you're supposed to do in this space, even though people have been so excited about it for so many years because it looks so amazing. When you actually get in and play it, this is the sort of like, is it a great work of art but a bad game, kind of thing. It's a really interesting example from that perspective.
Cool. Yeah, I've yet to play. I've been on the hype wagon, as they say, but I'm excited to get hands on, also to get my kids playing it as well. So we will do that. But I think we probably should move on. So thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Yes,
here at
thank you.
And really appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.